Despicable Me 5 isn't confirmed yet, but the theories flying around right now are honestly wilder than anything we've seen in the franchise so far, including one that turns Gru's own twin brother into the next big villain, and another that could send Gru back in time to face himself. If you're ready for the next chapter in Gru's story, smash that like button and subscribe, because we're breaking down the 10 biggest theories fans can't stop talking about. Number 1. Is Gru secretly setting up to become the villain of Despicable Me 5? On the surface, Gru's always played the cheerful, well-groomed opposite of his perpetually grumpy brother, desperate to prove himself as a real supervillain in his own right, despite constantly falling short. But look closer at everything simmering underneath that friendly exterior. Gru grew up managing their father's pig farm, while Gru grew up in the shadow of a family legacy built entirely around villainy, and years of feeling overlooked and underappreciated could easily curdle into real resentment over time. What if Gru spent this whole stretch quietly studying Gru's mistakes, building alliances, and gathering resources completely under the radar, all while playing the harmless little brother everyone assumes he still is? With Gru Jr. now in the picture, Gru might see his own nephew as living proof he's been permanently pushed out of the family legacy for good, and that kind of desperation for approval could push him towards something drastic, even kidnapping his own nephew just to finally prove he's capable of being the villain he's always wanted to be. Number 2. What if every single villain Gru has ever defeated finally decided to team up against him at once, all at the same time? Across this entire franchise, one antagonist gets the spotlight per movie, but none of them actually disappear once they lose. They just quietly resurface in the background, still locked away and still holding a grudge that's had years to fester. Vector, Scarlet Overkill, Macho, Balthazar Brat, and Belle Bottom have all crossed paths with Gru at different points across his life, and by the end of the 4th movie, they're all sitting in the exact same AVL prison together, sharing space and swapping stories about the man who ruined each of their careers. That's not just a coincidence, that's genuinely an opportunity waiting to happen. A coordinated breakout bringing every one of Gru's old enemies together for one final act of revenge would genuinely be the biggest villain team up this franchise has ever attempted. And honestly, it feels like exactly the kind of finale this saga has been quietly building toward for years now. Number 3, could Despicable Me 5 actually send an adult Gru back in time to confront his own childhood self face to face? It sounds wild, but stick with us on this one. If Gru somehow gained access to real-time travel, maybe through some new invention of Dr. Nefario's tucked away in the lab, imagine him traveling straight back to preschool to sit down with the version of himself who dreamed of nothing but becoming the world's greatest villain. Back before any of his classmates ever laughed at him for it, adult Gru could walk his younger self through everything that eventually happened, the years spent chasing villainy, and the moment he finally realized that family actually mattered more than infamy ever could in the end. Would young Gru actually listen and change course early on, or would he brush it all off entirely and continue exactly as he always had regardless? And there's an even bigger ripple effect buried in that idea. If Gru could go back far enough, he might even be able to prevent Vector's rise entirely, quietly rewriting an entire chunk of the franchise's history in the process without anyone else realizing it happened. Number 4. Is Vector actually gearing up for a real comeback after everything he's survived across this franchise so far? He was the very first villain Gru ever faced, eventually ending up stranded on the moon, then briefly stuck on Mars in his underwear after a rescue mission gone completely sideways, and finally landing in AVL custody by the end of the 4th movie, seen dancing and singing along cheerfully with his fellow prisoners. Fans have noticed something in that scene though. He doesn't exactly look defeated or broken. He looks like someone with plenty of time on his hands and a clear plan already forming, given how much history he shares with Gru, going all the way back to the very first film, and how the story always seems to circle back to him eventually in one way or another. It genuinely wouldn't be surprising if Vector uses all that idle prison time to plot a real, surprising return to the spotlight. Number 5. Does Maxim Le Mal's grudge against Gru actually go back much further than fans originally assumed at first? Most people saw him purely as a new villain introduced in the 4th movie, but it turns out the two of them have actually known each other since their school days, decades before any of the events fans have actually seen play out on screen. As the story goes, Gru once took credit for an idea that originally belonged to Maxim, and that betrayal appears to have quietly festered for years, eventually fueling his transformation into a fully fledged supervillain determined to finally settle the score once and for all. Even after his defeat and imprisonment, a grudge that's had that many years to build rarely just disappears overnight, and there's a real chance he returns in the next installment with an entirely new plan. And considering how much he loves cockroaches, probably some genuinely disturbing new weapons to go along with it too. Number 6. Did Scarlet Overkill actually have every reason to hate Gru long before fans ever realized it? As one of the franchise's earliest and most iconic villains, she originally saw the minions as perfect servants for her own rise to power, only to have a young Gru step in and outsmart her completely, stopping helping her and her husband Herb's escape and effectively handing them straight over to the authorities in the process. That defeat happened decades before the events of the mainline films, meaning she's genuinely had years upon years to sit with that loss and quietly plan some form of retaliation ever since. Considering how deeply personal that early defeat clearly was for her, losing everything to a literal child, she's exactly the kind of long-dormant threat this franchise loves quietly resurrecting for a bigger, more emotional payoff down the line. Number 7. Could El Macho's history with the minions come back to haunt Gru in a much darker way than fans currently expect? Long before his official defeat, El Macho had already crossed one of the franchise's darkest lines by working with Dr. Nefario to capture and mutate minions into monstrous creatures purely as weapons for his own agenda. That's not just villain posturing for shock value, that's a direct, deeply personal attack on the exact group Gru has always protected like family throughout every single movie. Given how much weight the franchise has placed on Gru's loyalty to his minions over the years, treating them as genuine family rather than disposable henchmen, a villain with that specific history feels like exactly the kind of threat capable of hitting Gru somewhere far more personal than any stolen landmark or diamond ever could manage. Number 8. Is Belle Bottom and the rest of the Vicious Six still a genuine threat waiting quietly in the wings? Long before Gru became the family man audiences know today, he crossed paths with this entire villain group during his younger years, eventually helping take them down alongside his minions and a reformed member named Knuckles. Belle herself has remained locked away ever since, but with so many of Gru's old enemies now sharing the exact same prison, it's entirely possible she reconnects with familiar faces and finds her way back into the story, especially if a full-scale villain uprising really is where this franchise is quietly heading next. Number 9. Will Dru's complicated loyalty to his brother actually get tested one final time in the next movie? Despite everything that's happened between them over the years, Dru has consistently shown real, if occasionally clumsy, dedication to Gru whenever it truly mattered most, teaming up with him to recover the Dumont Diamond and eventually helping take down Balthazar Brat together as a real team. But that loyalty has never really been tested against genuine, deep-rooted jealousy the way it might be if Dru truly believes he's been permanently replaced by Gru Jr. in the family's future plans. Whether that tension eventually pushes him toward outright villainy or ends up strengthening their relationship instead, it's clearly unfinished business this franchise hasn't fully addressed head-on just yet. Number 10. Is Despicable Me 5 actually closer to happening than most fans currently realize right now? Following the massive success of the 4th film, franchise director Chris Renault has confirmed a 5th movie is genuinely possible, though he's been careful to note it entirely depends on the story actually being worth telling rather than rushing something out purely to capitalize on the momentum of the last release. Given just how many loose threads are currently sitting untouched across this franchise, Dru's uncertain future, half a dozen unresolved villains still holding grudges, and Gru's own evolving identity as a father figure, there's clearly no shortage of material ready and waiting whenever Illumination decides the time is finally right to move forward with it. So, which one caught you off guard the most? The theory about Dru turning villain, or the idea of Gru traveling back in time to face himself? Let us know in the comments. We read every single one. And if you want more Despicable Me theories, make sure you like and subscribe, because there's still plenty more buried in this franchise we haven't gotten to yet.